guys, are you considering selling your home but don't really know who owns the house? Well, this is Zanganeh here with Keller Williams, bringing you tips and tricks on how to win in the San Diego real estate market. So today, I'm very fortunate and honored to have two lovely ladies here from Fidelity Title, Sean and Alex. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And today's topic we're going to be talking about is vesting and who owns the property when it comes time to sell. Too many times I'll go out and meet with somebody to take a listing and we find out that who's actually on title isn't who I'm meeting with, or we're missing somebody when we go to that meeting. So when it comes time to listing your home, ladies, thank you again so much for being here. Tell me a few things about title insurance and what do sellers and agents need to know about to make sure we have a successful, seamless sale.
Okay. It all starts with a very critical thing, and the first thing is vesting. How that property is vested is a piece of the puzzle that you're going to want to know, because you may be going on a listing appointment and you think you're going with Susan and Robert Smith, and you arrive and you see Robert but you don't see Susan. Now Susan could be at the market, she could be divorced, she could be deceased. But sometimes what you think is one thing, and then you arrive, all of a sudden you're going to have a different orientation to who's actually signing the documentation.
Sure, absolutely. So let's say one of those scenarios happens. What next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we really need to determine is how the property is currently vested. So as an example, let's take Sean's example with Robert and Susan, and they currently hold title as a husband and wife, as joint tenants. And you find out when you get there that Susan has passed away, but they never did anything to clean the title up. So now we have to do that. We have to say, okay, what's next? So you can still take the listing with Robert, but what we're going to need is for Robert to sign what's called an affidavit of death of joint tenants, and we're going to need a certified copy of a death certificate. Okay. So that's just one scenario.
Awesome. So very commonly today I'll meet with a family and their home is owned in a trust, which is probably a smart thing to do in many cases.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that and what's different when it comes to owning a home in a trust versus an individual.
That's a great question as well. So let's take that same scenario. Robert and Susan has passed away. They have it in a trust. What we need to do is we need to see the trust to make sure that, in fact, Susan was one of the trustees and that Robert is the only other trustee. And then it's really going back to that same thing. We need an affidavit of death of trustee in this case, and then a certified copy of the death certificate, and you can move on and you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So we know in California, unfortunately, 50% of marriages do not work. And you can call it a divorce, a domestic reorganization, or however you look at it. What happens next when a couple has separated while still owning a home, and all the different scenarios that run with that?
That's another great question. So let's take the first scenario where they were divorced 5 or 6 years ago. And Susan quit claims her interest off because Robert was awarded the property, and she is now in Europe doing her thing. One of the things, if it was done outside of the scope of a transaction and Robert hasn't done like a refinance where there's been title insurance issued, what we are going to require is what's called an affidavit of uninsured deed. Sometimes that's really super hard to get. So what we say is, okay, let's see the marital settlement agreement and see if Robert was in fact awarded the property. If he was, then we can move on and we don't need Susan again. What we're concerned with, just as a side note, is that we want to make sure that Susan didn't sign this quitclaim under duress, particularly in a divorce situation. So that's the reason why we want to see the marital settlement agreement.
Okay, awesome. So clearly there's a lot of stuff that goes into title when it comes to listing a property for sale. Obviously between Robert and Susan, or the Robert and Susan you guys know out there, there's definitely always complications that can come up to make things more challenging for a sale. So what we always recommend is talk with your agent, talk with your title team before the home goes on the market, so we know exactly what we're dealing with to make sure it's a smooth, easy, and successful sale for you guys. So thank you, ladies, so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And again, guys, if you're always looking for tips and tricks on how to win in the San Diego real estate market, remember to keep watching these videos. Thanks so much. This is Zanganeh, Keller Williams, bringing you tips and tricks on how to win in the San Diego real estate market. Have a great day.